Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really glad you're here. My name is Danica, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Plaid, focused on our fraud suite. Today's fraud session is going to be a little different from the other sessions you may have joined today or in years past if you have joined us there. We decided that to change things up, and instead of just like a slide deck and a demo and product updates being thrown at you, we thought it'd be more valuable to just have an honest, real conversation. So that's what we're going to do. Today, you're going to hear directly from the people who actually build the products behind our fraud suite here at Plaid. They're going to share how they think about fraud today and the modern fraud defenses that are really needed today. So we all probably know this, but here's the thing about fraud. It doesn't stand still. The moment you get better at catching it, it shifts. The team that stays ahead are the ones who have a relentless strategy to learn, to improve faster than the threat evolves. And that's one of the threads we really want to pull on today. Of course, we're also going to share insights on how our customers are using these solutions today, and maybe even a little rapid fire hot seat if we have time. As we were speaking, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to either get to them live or we'll follow up with you directly. All right, moving on here. I'll change slides. So before we dive into the meat of the conversation, I do want to quickly level set for anyone who may not be familiar with our fraud suite at Plaid, particularly Plaid Protect. It is our fraud intelligence platform built on data and insights that really only Plaid has, that fraudsters really can't fake like they can with other traditional fraud prevention methods. And it helps companies identify and stop fraudulent activity in real time across onboarding, identity verification, payments, and more. At the core of Protect is our fraud model called the Trust Index, or as we call it, TI. It draws on patterns visible from Plaid's really unique vantage point across thousands of financial apps and institutions, most likely all the ones that you use on a regular basis, ultimately providing you, our customer, a trust score and the related fraud attributes for any given user. It also allows you to understand the risk of users who are not fraudulent and optimize their experience for them. So you get both sides of the coin there. TI1 was our first generation model. TI2 introduced new signals like transaction data, and TI3, which we're here to talk to you about today, represents a really meaningful step forward in both what we can detect and how fast we are iterating. All right, that's the one-on-one. Let's get into what makes it tactically different. I do want to start with introducing our two stars of the day, Chris and Anton. Anton, he leads product and engineering for Protect. We have been lucky enough to have him at Plaid for more than 6 years. And previously, he worked at companies like Google and JetBrains across machine learning, large-scale data systems, and fraud infrastructure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anton. Great to be here with y'all.
Awesome. And then also joining us is Chris. He is an engineering manager on Plaid's data and AI team. Chris has been at Plaid for over 7 years. These two are very tenured, and he has helped build and scale systems behind Plaid Protect's fraud models.
Hey, I'm Chris. Excited to join you both.
Awesome. Okay. Well, on to the fun part. Hopefully, I think it should be fun. Is the real conversation, the real questions. I'll try to give you just an easy one to start out with. But for you, Anton, Plaid sits across thousands of apps. I've already said this, but thousands of apps and lots of institutions. So when you're building the fraud models, how does that kind of unique vantage point actually change what's possible with what you do?
Great question, Danny. So legacy fraud systems were built around detecting alerts and spikes for a single identifier. Say you have an IP address and you suddenly have a surge of activity on that IP address. You block that. Or maybe you have a phone number and you already had 5 users who signed up with that phone number and opened a bank account. And the 6th one, you won't let them do that anymore. But fraudsters are smart and they adapt. They learned not to reuse the same devices, the same infrastructure more than a couple of times. And so these legacy systems are not really effective against that type of fraud. And that's where the network insights come in. On the one hand, network insights are a lot harder to do. We had to build a whole new system and infrastructure at Plaid in order to even analyze that data. But on the other hand, once you have it, you can see the connections that were previously invisible. And now we are catching fraud rings that were there always, but they were invisible and we could not see them before we had these connections in the Plaid network.
Got it. Browsers are so sophisticated these days, so that makes sense. Okay, Can you give me a concrete example of a fraud pattern that Plaid was able to detect that a single institution or app simply could not have caught on their own? Maybe Chris, here you can answer this one.
Yeah, I can take this one. So a concrete example here would be promo abuse across multiple fintech apps. If you look just at one app in isolation, the behavior may not look that unusual. Like a user connects their bank account, completes onboarding flow, maybe earns a referral bonus, and then disconnects. This can happen for perfectly legitimate reasons. But Plaid can see the broader network pattern. We may see the same user, the same device or bank account, or their identity information moving across many different apps in a short period of time, repeating that same connect and disconnect behavior, which makes that like much more suspicious. This is where the pattern becomes much clearer. It's not just one suspicious event at one app, it's a coordinated behavior across an entire ecosystem. With Plus Network, we can detect fraud patterns that are very hard for a single institution or a single fintech app to distinguish on their own because they only see one piece of the puzzle.
And I have another one. ACH returns for a small regional bank. I actually had multiple cases like that where fraudsters figure out a way to open accounts and then they start hitting customers with ACH returns. And we could see the ACH returns, but before the graph insights, we could not connect the dots and stop them before they happen.
Mm. That's always the goal, right? Not after the fact. Cool. For us non-technical people, I think this kind of idea is like, how do we see beyond the four walls of our own company? And Protect seems to be really allowing our customers to have that like expansive view, which is really powerful. Okay. In practice, like how are we seeing customers use the trust scores that come from the trust index, or even the data attributes that they get from that, that Protect is providing for them?
Yeah. So with every Protect call, you would get the score, and then you would get the attributes, and that's a large number, hundreds of attributes that allow you to see deeper into the fraud signals. And we see a couple of different patterns how customers integrate with these insights. For teams who want to just press the easy button, integrate quickly, and launch quickly, they would use the score because that already takes advantage of all of the attributes and some features that are not even exposed. And then for advanced teams who have in-house machine learning and who have built their own risk engines, they tend to prefer using the attributes. They combine the attributes with the features they have internally or from other vendors. They retrain the models or adjust the risk rules, and that gives them more flexibility how exactly they want to use the system.
Got it. So it sounds like it's very flexible and it kind of meets customers where they're at and their needs. And it's also complementary. It's not like a rip and replace type thing, which is always nice. Okay. Shifting here, many competitors, they claim they have network data or bank level data. What makes the data behind Protect genuinely different? And why is that hard to replicate?
It really comes down to just one thing, the scale of the network.
Yeah.
So these competitors, they sit downstream from Plaid. Plaid is still serving the connection and interacting with the consumers and the banks, and they just get the same data downstream. And what's different is that they only see their slice of the picture, but Plaid sees the whole picture. And when it comes to the network insights and fraud, the relationship is not linear, it's quadratic. What it means is that if you only see, say, half of the network, see 4 times fewer connections between participants in that network. And that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, just to add a bit more color to what Angel just said, and also just add a few numbers there because I deal with numbers all the time. Plaid has seen over 1 billion devices, hundreds of millions of phone numbers and emails, and connects more than 1 million like users every single day. Over the past decade, that has allowed us to build a event-driven graph with tens of billions of edges, connecting entities like phone numbers, devices, bank accounts, and users. That scale and visibility is only possible because Plaid sits across so many institutions and fintech apps and observe all network activities from them.
Yeah. Awesome. Having unique data is one thing. It's very important, but having the scale of that data is a whole other. All right, let's talk about how the team actually builds and ships these models. To me, that's always so interesting to hear from you. So we announced a couple weeks ago the latest version of the Trust Index, TI3, is here. How is that better than previous models?
Yeah, I can take this one. So TS3 is better in two main ways. We are broadening the data going into the model, but at the same time, we are also going deeper in how we understand the relationship across the network. On the broadened data side, TI3 incorporates more categories of features than prior versions. That includes more institutional level traffic patterns, more granular account disconnection signals, and also broader identity and device signals like features aggregated on street addresses and also TLS fingerprints. Well, at the same time, the bigger shift is depth. Fraud is rarely just one user or one bank account acting in isolation, like we already talked about in this session. More sophisticated fraudsters often create many accounts and reuse devices or pieces of their identities to make each individual event or activity look less suspicious. With TI3, we expanded the graph behind the model. We are now able to traverse deeper into the network up to 9 hops and discover many more relationships than before. So instead of asking, does this user look risky on their own, TI3 can better answer what does this user connects to in the network, and are we seeing coordinated patterns from their activities? This is what drives the improvement. More signals, deeper network contacts, and a better ability to detect sophisticated fraud patterns.
And to add to that, on the product side, we matured our systems, we improved reliability and latency of the API, and we also launched new APIs that let customers get the insights where they need it, anywhere in the user journey. And that is especially valuable given how diverse and different our customers and their industries are, and how different their user flows look like. So for example, some customers will start the user onboarding from linking a bank account and do identity verification later, but other customers will do identity verification first, and yet others will defer identity verification to just an escalation point in the journey when they observe risk signals. With our new APIs, all of these customers can call Protect when they need it.
Very nice. These seem like all very customer-driven changes, which is always a good path to go on. Walk us through the development of this latest model from idea to production. And something maybe to touch on too is like the world is changing right now very rapidly. And I feel like even when we came out with TI1, the tools that you may had then are different than the tools you have now. So how has that process really changed from just model to model on how you can actually execute on these?
Yeah, I can tell you here, and the short answer is it changed a lot. But like just to give a more detailed answer, yeah, like the first step is to decide what new signals we need to bring into TI3. As mentioned earlier, they involve more data sources, deeper graph contacts, and just more ways to describe user and account behavior. But the bigger story here is how quickly we were able to do that. TI3 came just less than 6 months after the previous model, and the major reason why we could do this in a short time frame is that we changed the way we build and test features. In the past, feature development was a very manual process. It's quite tedious. A data scientist might just have an idea, define and backfill the feature, evaluate against a baseline, and then summarize the results. Going from the idea to a web-native feature could take days or even weeks. For TI3, we lean much more heavily into agentic feature development. We can start with mining hypotheses in plain language, and then AI agents can help us to turn that into feature definitions and run feature backfills, model evaluations, and write as a report. Just to be clear, like the human is still making the final decision. Like at this moment, we are still reviewing the logic, checking the results, and deciding what gets promoted into the model eventually. But a lot of the repetitive work is much faster and more streamlined. So the development cycle changed on a high level from a slower sequential process into a much faster parallelized experimentation loop. This is what allowed us to bring in substantially more insights into TI3, rather than with confidence and to get the model in production much faster than we could have before.
Yeah, and to add to that, even for old school feature development where a human is still doing the evaluation, or maybe for deeper research flows, AI has changed that dramatically in terms of developing the tooling. our data is so vast and complex that tooling used to be a major bottleneck. And we worked on tools to explore the data for years, and they were still limiting our view. But with AI, even non-technical people can ship new tooling quickly, and that allows us to look much deeper into the graph, into the network, and mine insights from that.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that comes up though when we're having this like speed conversation is how do you move faster with confidence? I think there's an element of like when you move fast, things could slip through. So, how do you move fast again without introducing regressions or actually making the product worse in the end?
Yeah, great question. And it's also a very important one because moving faster only matters if you can really move safely.
You guys have t-shirts that say that?
Yeah, well, now we are adopting the same principle in developing our new products. So the way we think about it is, again, like every model change needs strong guardrails before it ever reaches our customers. That includes tracking the model score distribution, the feature distribution, and also comparing the online behavior against our offline backtests. This helps us to capture issues like data gaps, unexpected drifts, or features behaving drastically differently in production than they did during development. We've also deployed AI-assisted workflows in the observability layer, which helps summarize changes, surface anomalies, and point us to the areas that deserve additional human review. The advanced observability tooling is what now gives us confidence that like when customers integrate with Protect, the performance they see in production is aligned with what we validated during the offline backtesting. So, and we are improving the product without introducing any avoidable regressions.
And to double click on that last advanced observability point, we launched a new API that allows customers to send us feedback and the results of their internal investigations. So we monitor all live models against that feedback. And if we spot a regression or maybe we spot a new fraud pattern emerging, then we would react quickly and adjust our models, our scores, our attributes to catch that.
Got it. So the speed's real, but it's not reckless. That helps us sleep at night. There's real infrastructure and process behind it. I want to pivot just a little bit here, and I want to spend a few minutes on just where all of this is headed. It's very exciting. It's very new, but there's probably some strategy to where it's all heading. So there's been a lot of conversation in the industry. You see a lot of this commentary on LinkedIn or wherever about foundational models. Is that a direction that we at Plaid are moving towards? And if so, what would that unlock for us?
Yeah, I can take this one. Yes, absolutely. This is the direction we are actively exploring and researching on. The reason why this is especially important for Plaid to think critically about is that foundational models are most powerful when they are trained on a truly unique data asset. For us, the data is not really natural language or images, it's financial activity, such as new account connections, identity changes, device signals, and cash flow patterns. When you bring these signals together, you can start to build a much richer understanding of a user's financial footprint. Not just what one event looks like, but how different entities and behavior associated with that user relate to each other over time. For fraud, this could unblock a few important things. It could help us to generalize better across different fraud use cases, detect new patterns earlier, and also transfer learnings from one part of our network to another part more effectively. We are actively researching on this direction right now, and the early results are really promising, and we will share more updates soon.
Great. Excited to see those. Okay. One more question on this before we switch to another format here. But fraud shows up across account opening, transactions, identity verification, really the full customer journey. As our models have matured, how has our thinking evolved about where Protect and the Trust Index can be applied?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our first and strongest model is at the account linking stage. So when a bank account is being linked to your app, we have the broadest visibility. We have the device and connection signals, we have the bank data, we have the identity data from the user, and that's where we started. But then many customers want to use Protect at different points of user journey. So we are partnering with Plaid products like IDV, identity verification, guaranteed ACH, and Signal to bring the power of Protect into those points of user journey. So transactions, identity verification. And then also in Protect itself, You're adding new endpoints that let you call protect with just user identity or just device information collected through the SDK. And stay tuned. We'll talk more about that soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. Okay, before we close out, I do want to do a quick round of this or that. They are meant to be just like fast, instinctive answers only. So very short, just whatever comes first of mind. Anton, I'll start with you. What is harder to defend against? A fraudster who has hit you once with something super sophisticated, or one who hits you 1,000 times, but it's something very simple?
Oh, it's very easy. It's a single fraudster. Even if they hit you with something very simple, you cannot detect them if they're doing that once.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. And for you, Chris, what is more dangerous? A fraud pattern that you know about, but you can't stop yet, or one that you just haven't discovered yet?
Yeah, I would say the ones that we haven't discovered yet, like those unknowns. If we already know it, we will figure out a way to stop it.
Of course. Okay, that makes sense. And Pop-Tarts or toaster strudels? There is only one right answer here.
It's both.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts for me.
All right, Pop-Tarts for me all day. Good answers. We can still be friends. Last one. If you could have one superpower for fraud detection, what would it be?
For me, it would be knowing where fraud will happen next. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of similar to Anton's. Like, I would like to rate fraudsters' creative minds and know where they're heading to, like in their mind.
Yeah. Mind reading is always the superpower that most of us either mind reading or flying. I think mind reading in this case would be really helpful. All right, great. Well, thank you both. I'll go ahead and wrap us up as we're nearing the time we have today. I will say I get to work on these products day in and day out, and I also work with you both day in, day out. But getting to hear straight from you both on topics that we get asked about daily was so insightful. I have a lot of new insight to use. So thank you. It was helpful for me. I hope it was helpful for the audience. One thing that really did come through really clearly today is that one of the most important things you can do when it comes to fraud prevention is just to have a partner who can stay ahead of it as it evolves. One who's continuously learning, continuously improving, and is really responding faster than the threat. We have to be faster than these fraudsters. That's what we're building at Plaid, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. And it's really only possible because of our position in the financial ecosystem and the data that comes along with it. If you're thinking about your own approach or how you guys can kind of learn more about Protect, reach out to your account manager if you're already a customer or to our sales team. We would love to continue the conversation. And thank you so much to Anton and Chris, and thank you all for being here. You will receive a recording after the session, and any of the questions that you put into the chat that we didn't get to today, we'll hopefully follow up with you directly. But have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.